What the fuck is going on? Okay, I'm just gonna, the noise, the construction, I am gonna do my best. It has been going on for like hours now. So I just wanna record this and see how it goes. All right. Today we are gonna talk about healthcare in Portugal. And it is a great time for me to talk about it because I literally just went to the doctor's today. And I did a ton of diagnostics. First of all, let's start off with the two main ways that you can get healthcare in Portugal. And then we'll back up and talk about like when you're a visa holder and when you're a resident and how that's different. So the two ways that you can go to the hospital is number one, public, and number two, private. You were to go to public, it has some pros and cons, but it is not the easiest to get into within your first year of being a resident. And that's why a lot of people go private. When I traveled to Portugal as a tourist, I had no idea that I was going to ever be a resident here. I fell and hurt myself, and I was able to go to CUF, go through the emergency clinic, and pay out of pocket, and it was, compared to the US, incredibly cheap. Then a couple of years before I was a resident, I came here to kind of like see in the wintertime if it was like the place I wanted to be. I wanted to stay for the like 3 months in the worst possible weather to see if I could handle it. And at that point, I needed to get an emergency breast scan and mammogram. And I went again through the emergency clinic, and a mammogram and an ultrasound with a doctor cost me 85 euros. Okay. So keep that in mind as to what the cost is. Now, I was not a citizen, I was not a resident, and I was not a resident visa holder. So I was just some Joe Schmo tourist who just walked into the clinic and was like, hey, and I didn't just walk into the clinic, I walked into the ER. So that's important to know as well. So they did an emergency mammogram and an emergency ultrasound, and it cost me 85 euros. First of all, if you're a tourist here, you can come and be out of pocket, and there are plenty of people who come as tourists and do what's called medical tourism. They pay out of pocket because they're never going to be a resident, they're never going to be a citizen, and they're just here to get good medical health care. And Portugal, I think, is like number 7 in the world for the best healthcare. The doctors are elite, but very different than the doctors in the US. And what I have found is the reason why maybe they don't seem as comprehensive is because in the US, we are very litigious. We're here in Portugal, it's not necessarily the case. It is not as scary as getting sick or having an emergency situation in the US. Next situation is that you have applied to become a resident in Portugal. And once you get accepted, there is this gap that they need you to have gap insurance. So they don't care about your US. What the fuck is going on? When you are in this gap situation, they don't care about your US insurance, medical insurance, because it's not going to protect you in the EU. So depending on whatever country you get your residency visa, you have this period where you're not quite in the country, you still haven't signed up, you don't have a medical number with Portugal or with Spain or with whatever country, and they want to make sure that you have insurance that's going to cover you in the EU. So there is very special insurance. And each country has a very like a chart or a checklist of the minimum amount that they want you, maximum amount, those kinds of things. That is something that you work out when you go to your appointment for your visa residency approval. You show them that you have that insurance. That's kind of like a gap insurance. And so then your options are private or public. If you go public, you get your card number, your medical ID number, and it can take a really, really, really long time to be assigned a doctor. But you can go in and get things done if you push it. You go in to the public and there are certain things that you will take a long time to get done. So every year you'll get a mammogram, no problem, it's free. Every year you'll get, your COVID vaccines or your flu vaccine. Yep, that's free, you'll get notified. But if you have something like you have a lump, maybe in your breast, and you want to know what it is, then you're gonna go to a private hospital and get that diagnosed because you'll get it done faster. They work interchangeably. The doctors are the same. I haven't been assigned a public doctor yet, but I could go and really push the issue. Right down the road is the health center for my district, and I could go in and just like really push. I could go into the public hospital and ask. That would be no problem. But what I've chosen to do is get private insurance. So if it's emergent, you go public. If it is emergent, but you're not sure if it's really emergent, like you want diagnostics fast, you go public or you go private. I cannot emphasize enough how much stress has been relieved from knowing that I will be taken care of. I had a chest x-ray, 3 views. I had a gynecological pap smear and a vaginal ultrasound. I had a echocardiogram, Doppler of my vessels and my heart, and I had an EKG strip. All of those. So technically five things. We schedule the 5 tests. I go in and let's see. My first test started at 2:45. My last test ended at 3:50. For those tests, you cannot imagine how much I paid. As an American, try to guess. And I will tell you at the end of this video because you just won't. I had to have her tell me again. I did all of these and I was quite scared. But everybody was so nice and so helpful. Everybody spoke English. Everybody was explaining what they were doing. There are some major differences though. And some of the major differences are, like for my echocardiogram, I walked in, there were 3 women, and they said, okay, can you take your shirt, your bra off and lay on the table? No coverage, just got naked, sat on the table. Same thing with the EKG. She shut the door and there was no like gown or anything like that. My pap smear, I did have a gown that was kind of like a waist gown. And but a man brought me in and told me, what to do, and then got the ultrasound machine hooked up, and then the sonographer came in. Here's the best part about this, is that my x-rays were done by a radiologist, and he said, everything looks good. My ultrasound, vaginal ultrasound, was done by a female sonographer who I thought was a sonographer. No, she was the OBGYN. She said, oh, you have a cyst. Did you know that? No. Okay. Yeah, we should just keep a look at it. It looks completely benign. Then she took my pap smear with the ultrasound guided, which was absolutely painless. Absolutely painless. And then I went to my EKG and they said, oh, yeah, we do see a couple of EPCs. And that was it. But they said everything else is normal. My echocardiogram, the sonographer said, everything looks great. Your heart is really, really good. We can see your VPCs as well, but that's normal for us to be able to see that. Your heart takes good pictures. So I left with the idea that I didn't have to wait for like major results. I know in my mammogram, the last time I went in to get a mammogram, and then I went to get my ultrasound, which is normal here to have both. And by the time that I went into the ultrasound, the lady that was doing the ultrasound said, your mammogram is clear. We're just going to check again just to make sure. And I said, okay, thinking that she was the sonographer. No, she was the OBGYN. She was the one. And she said, nope, everything's clear. Thank you so much. And I was like, wow. Trying to just think about getting naked and walking into the mammogram room, totally shirtless, a little weird. So let's go one by one. I don't think you're going to believe it. I honestly don't think you're going to believe it. So let's see. First thing, and I'll do, if it was just a tourist that came in and did it, you know, didn't have any insurance whatsoever, and what I paid for insurance. So, all right. Doppler, EKG, echocardiogram, done. Without insurance, it would have been $16.80. With insurance, it was €4. €4. Let's see. For my ultrasound, vaginal ultrasound, and my pap smear, quickest OBGYN exam, ultrasound, cyst on my right ovary that will monitor, but otherwise normal. Good to go. Here, without insurance, it would have been €50. With insurance, it was €15. I have never had a vaginal ultrasound that was considered routine at all. And both of them were €15 total. Okay. The chest x-ray, 2 views. All right, x-ray done. Come into a little room, change into a gown, 2 x-rays, done. Without insurance would have been €19. With insurance, €4.75. And here's the big one that scared me, because I was like, I know how expensive they are in the US. My echocardiogram and vessel, abdominal and vessel Doppler. Without insurance, it would have been €155. €155. Can you imagine only paying €155? Like, it upsets me because there are so many people in the US that could have had preventative care for €155. So with my insurance, it was $38.75. Sorry, it's so makes me mad, makes me sad. If this kind of healthcare, if this kind of care happened in the US, things would just be so much different. That's all I gotta say. So here is my total. And I had to ask her to repeat it again because I was just like, what? I didn't think I would be this emotional, but it's one of those things that you never realized was such a stressor until it stopped being a stressor. And then the weight was lifted. I hope it helps. If you have any questions, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not an insurance professional, but I will do my best to help you. Thanks. Bye.